Thanks for coming and doing the youth leadership session today. There's a handful of things that we're trying to get out of this. Firstly, we want to make sure that everyone really understands how the youth leadership and small group activity component of our Scout method contributes to a really great program. Secondly, we want to make sure that everyone's got some strategies to improve the level of youth leadership in their section, be it at the front line or be it in a management formation. And finally, we really want your feedback on how we can make Scouts Victoria fundamentally youth-led with adult support. So surely we do this already as Scouts. Well, recently, through the World Youth Involvement Policy, Scouting organisations across the world agreed that Scouting is a movement of young people, supported by adults. It is not a movement for young people managed by adults only. Thus, Scouting offers the potential for a learning community of young people and adults working together in a partnership of enthusiasm and experience. This basic principle should be reflected both in the youth program of a National Scout Association and in the management structures of the organisation. When Scouting works well, we do this naturally because it's part of our educational method, the Scout method. But can we genuinely say that these principles of youth leadership extend through our whole program and through our whole organisation? The Youth Program Review is looking at youth leadership in depth already, and they've done some great work so far. In Victoria, we have the opportunity to be at the forefront of this and take these principles and give them a try and see how it works in a Victorian and an Australian context. We have our fantastic State Youth Council, our members of the National Youth Council, and a number of Scout forums. But what's next? What's the next level of youth involvement in Scouts Victoria? So let's talk first about youth leadership in your local section. We know there's great things happening locally with young people leading fantastic activities and fantastic programs. But with that, we also know that there's a lot of uninspiring program going on with youth leadership and activities in small groups being more like an afterthought as opposed to a way of delivering our program. And we know that's not what the kids sign up for, and it's not what the parents sign up for.
Hey guys, look what I found in the Q store.
But what is it?
It's our program, isn't it? We'll work through it, week by week. Just change the dates.
Sporing, Prosecuting, Advanced Pig Sticking. Oh.
And it's got a terrific program for Anzac Day. Charge the beaches, climb cliffs, dig trenches, shoot people.
I think it's his diary.
Welcome to the PL's weekend. At most troop councils, we're looking ahead at the next month or so at big events like the troop hike. But this is a big one. By tomorrow, we have to have the draft for the program for next year.
And swim, watch videos, eat junk food, watch more videos.
And swim.
There's a good recipe in this book about how to plan a year's program.
Yeah, we know, but do you have all the info we need?
Sure do. Here's the district calendar for next year, and the branch one, and the group. Let's start by writing down all the major events we have to consider. At the last Mindari, all the leaders swapped programs. I've got about 15 different troops ideas here. I want you to go through and pick out the best ones. And here are the Scout badge records for the whole troop. I want you to think about what badge work we might focus on next year.
Why don't we do something different, like air activities?
I give up. Why not?
But my patrol wants to do something different.
Again, why not?
So which of those does your troop council look like? If you're working in the Scout section and you haven't heard of the TC6 campaign, you need to get on it really quickly. This is a fantastic little program which challenges every troop in the state to conduct 6 troop councils in a year. And the reason that we do this is because we know that the best scouting happens when the troop council is driving the program and making the decisions that count. If we can get everyone up to that basic level of youth leadership, then we can start to get really adventurous. But we know that getting a unit council or a crew executive really humming is not easy, it's quite difficult. And we also know that getting Joey input into the mob program can be quite character forming. But we also know that there's nothing more satisfying as an adult supporter than when these things start to really work. When a unit council manages to deal with a behavioural issue, or when a pack council comes up with a bizarre program idea that we never would have thought of.
A reminder about next week.
Yeah, we're cooking dinner as patrols, so be here at 6, bring your cooking gear and a copy of your public liability insurance.
I said, who's been talking? You?
Sorry.
You will be. You're going to lose your PL badge for this one.
Actually, I don't have my PL badge.
You've been a PL for 6 months and you still don't have your PL badge? That's unbelievable.
That's what my parents said.
Well, give me your link badge instead and go back to Cubs.
But it's not illegal, is it?
That's not the point. What if the Cub parents find out?
If he wants to smoke, it's his business.
But if he smokes at Scouts, it's ours.
It's unhealthy, it's antisocial, and smoking in the Q store is dangerous.
The Q store? With the gas cylinders and all the tents?
We told you this was serious.
I don't think we can do anything. We never actually said you can't smoke at Scouts.
We can now.
So we're agreed on this? So who's going to tell him?
I can. He's at my school. It'll give us something to do in maths.
What if he does it again? What happens then?
He stays home at night. He has to clean the Q store. The ultimate is his parents getting told.
You want me to tell his parents?
No, that'd be doing. He has to tell his parents. And then they can call you to confirm they've had a chat.
Are we all agreed on this?
I'll tell him tomorrow.
Just like Baden Powell's PLs at that very first scout camp at Brownsea Island.
What?
Something about the good old days.
If there's one takeaway that it would be great for you to bring from this session, it's that using youth leadership and activities in small groups, what we might call together the patrol method, is not a tack on at the end of the program when everything else is sorted out. It's how we deliver good program in scouting. And it's also how we manage the life of the mob, the pack, the troop, the unit, the crew, and I'd also argue the group, the district, and all the rest as well. And it's why being an adult volunteer in scouting is the most challenging, terrifying, occasionally frustrating, but most satisfying adult volunteer gig on the planet. So later on, we'll be asking you what sort of resources would make your role easier as an adult supporter of young leaders. So we've got youth leadership humming in the sections. That's enough, isn't it? There are so many opportunities to make this a youth movement supported by adults. Take a look at Hart's ladder of young people's participation. This is a set of rungs, from insincere and tokenistic forms of youth participation right through to the ideal of shared decision making. Take a minute to consider where your formation sits on this ladder. It may not be the same every month, and it may not be the same on every issue, but see if you can find an average. I think in our management of scouting, we can range anywhere from the second rung right through to the 7th rung, but probably on average we sit at about rung 5, young people consulted and informed. I think we can do better. The Youth Program Review thinks we can do better, and the World Organisation of Scout Movements thinks that we can do better. We talk up scouting as the great youth development leadership program that it is, and yet sometimes we don't act like we believe it. We trust, train, and support our young people to run some of the biggest things in scouting. Some of those things that come to mind are Big Day Scout earlier this year, and we've got the fantastic National Moot Run in Victoria late next year. These are events that involve major budgets, big potential risks, and a lot of people. But we can often fail to draw on the skills that our young people get through scouting experiences and other experiences when it comes to running our movement. Sometimes we're concerned that we can't make it interesting enough. Sometimes we're concerned about duty of care, but other times we're concerned that they can't handle the responsibility or that it's not their turn.
Going on camp is the worst thing about being a scout leader. No one will help, and no one else knows how to do it.
So teach them.
So we've got our fantastic State Youth Council, our National Youth Council, and our Scout Forums. But these people can't be everywhere at once. How do we make sure that every young person has a voice in their movement? Our Chief Scouts ambassadors are quickly becoming the public face of scouting. Meanwhile, our State Scout Council has 2 members who are Scouts themselves. And if you look at the state leadership team, nearly a third of its membership is under the age of 30. But where should we focus next? Group councils are often seen as secret leaders' business. But why does this need to be the case? Already we should have the crew leader present. Why not also the unit chair? Why not on alternate months also have the patrol leaders? But what about our Sionis, our Mindaris and our other district training meetings? How is the Cub calendar for the year formed? Is there any youth involvement in that? Could we have a forum or a council of young people that contributes to the district Cub calendar? Can we support greater youth leadership by ensuring that each district venture council has a young person as its chairperson, maybe on a rotating basis? But what are the other opportunities? For example, who's telling the district commissioner what the views of young people are in his or her district? How do we need to change what we do so that young people are at the forefront of their group communities? How do we change, say, an annual reports night so that we make it clear to the community that this is a youth movement supported by adults? Can we have young people emceeing? Can we have young people delivering the reports from their sections? So these are just a handful of opportunities that I think could be explored. But what we really want is your feedback on how you'd like to see Scouts Victoria as a whole become more youth-led. But we're not alone in this. Other Scout organisations have already gone further in delivering greater youth leadership and greater youth involvement in decision making in their organisations. Take Canada, for example. Canada has a model that they describe as the key three. So what this means is that at every level of the organisation there is a young person sharing in the leadership of the movement. What this means is that young people at a local level have the ability to have their voice heard via their youth commissioner, and this feeds through to youth commissioner councils at other levels of the organisation. We go to Ireland and they have a slightly different model. They're much less about having appointed youth commissioners and more about having elected bodies of young people at each level of the organisation, right through to the national leadership. Again, what this means is that young people have the voice through their elected representatives, and those elected representatives share in the leadership of the organisation through membership of committees alongside adults. And if we go to the United Kingdom, we see a bit of a hybrid of the two. They have a national youth commissioner who's driving youth involvement initiatives throughout the organisation, and they also have elected models in different parts of the country. What Scouts Victoria needs to work towards is a model that suits us in our context, in the Australian context, but also something that's going to be consistent and understandable so that young people know how the organisation works. We're also not alone in this in the sense that Scouting is not the only organisation that involves young people. From our own youth sector in Victoria, we have a range of resources and guidance in terms of how to involve young people in decision-making structures and boards. Here are some guiding principles for involving young people in decision-making committees and making sure that that's a valuable experience both for the committee and for the young person themselves. Taking a look at those principles, the one that really resonates with me is making sure that our processes and our structures actually allow young people to be involved and not just require young people to fit into an adult world. There's some really practical things that could apply to. Have a think about the councils and committees that Scouting has. For a start, could a young person physically make it there? Would they have access to transport at that time of day? Is the time of day suitable? If you're expecting a cub to be involved in decision making for a meeting that begins at 8 o'clock, is that suitable? Is that appropriate? And finally, are there other ways that we unwittingly alienate young people from processes? Is it through use of jargon, use of acronyms? I hope we've given you a picture of what youth involvement and youth leadership could look like within Scouts Victoria. The next part of the session is when we ask for some information from you. We're going to ask you 3 broad questions. The first question is about what sort of strategies you think you can employ right now to ramp up the youth involvement in your formation, whether it be at a local program delivery level or whether you're involved in the management of the organisation. The second question is about the support and the resources that you're going to need as an adult supporter in Scouting to do this. We really want to know what you think would help to make your job easier to do that. And thirdly, we want your feedback in terms of how Scouts Victoria will look if it were to become truly youth-led with adult support. So what are we going to do with your input? Well, firstly, as we said, we're going to start developing the resources and support to make your life easier as an adult supporter of youth leadership. And secondly, we're going to use your feedback to develop a youth involvement model that could work across the whole organisation. If we're going to talk specifics here, we are going to, by the end of this year, use your feedback to develop a model that we can trial in a particular part of Victoria and see how it goes. Good luck with the task and thanks for your help. Have a great World Scouting Day.